Or I have to hit continue, don't I? There we go.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of eCommerce One. Today's guest is Matt Edmundson, CEO of the Jersey company, MD of Kurios Digital, and fellow e-commerce podcaster. How you doing, Matt?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Richard. Excited to be here. I love the fact I'm talking to a fellow e-commerce podcaster. It's fantastic.
It's like quite a unique club, isn't there? There isn't that many of us, I guess.
No, I don't think there is. And there's certainly not that many of us in the UK. No. I think, there's a handful of us. And so it's always great to connect with sort of fellow British e-commerce podcasters, that's for sure.
It's a club of about 5 people, I think, that I know.
Yeah, I can name about 4 or 5 at the moment. That's about it. Yeah.
So looking forward to this one. Obviously, I know you've been in e-commerce a long time. You wear a lot of different hats. Obviously, a lot of experience and a lot of different things you've got going on now. But if you were to sum up your passion in one sentence, what would it be, about e-commerce?
I love to wake up richer than when I went to sleep. And that, I say this to people all the time. It's just, I appreciate that might sound a little bit shallow. And of course, there's a lot more depth to it than that. But fundamentally, the fact of the thing about e-commerce, the fact that people buy from my website whilst I'm asleep is just fascinating to me. And it was a thing that caught my eye, 20 odd years ago, where you just kind of thought, goodness me, I've got in the morning, I've opened the computer and people have purchased from me. And I didn't do anything other than sleep. That was phenomenal. And so I love that. I love how you can reach people and connect with people all over the world. Like this conversation is happening because we're both into e-commerce. And I think it's an extraordinary connector. I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful industry to be in.
Yeah, here. Couldn't agree more. I think that, I can still remember the PayPal cha-ching noise that I used to set up on my phone back in the day. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah, cha-ching.
What's that? Oh, nothing. Changing the sound notification.
Yeah. It's funny what you remember, isn't it? All those little things. Yeah.
So you openly talk about failure in business and failure in e-commerce, and obviously been in business for a length of time, obviously trying a lot of different things. What would you say is one of the biggest failures that you've come across, and how did you overcome it?
I think there's so many ways to answer that question. I think if I look at some of the failures that I've had and I was to say what was the source of that failure, I think my arrogance would be is reality is the answer. Do you know what I mean? The belief that because one business has been successful, I could make any business successful. Do you know what I mean? And you're kind of like, I am the king of e-commerce. I'm going to start another business and create an empire. And nobody buys a single thing. And you just feel dejected and humiliated a little bit about it. And so we've set up, about 21 e-commerce websites, and a chunk of those failed. So even me, with my experience, with my expertise, with my understanding, I can't always make everything work. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I think there's something about failure that we as a society have we try and avoid, or we try not to go. Like, I don't know about your kids, but my kids, when they were at school, everybody won the Child of the Week award. It just kind of went round in a rota. And my son realized this, and he's like, well, what's the point? Why do I need to try? Because I'm going to get it anyway. It's like we couldn't teach our kids failure. Do you know what I mean? And it's like we couldn't teach them about first and second place. We couldn't teach them about winning and losing. And I appreciate not everything's about winning and losing. But there's something about failure which is quite magical, I think. It's heartbreaking at the time, but you can learn so much from it. And you can look at those things and go, that's where I made the mistake, was right there.
Huge learning, isn't it? Huge
it is.
Process and I think, just pushing through that rather than, I'm not going to take any risks. I'm not going to risk anything or try anything because what might happen? And usually it's like, what is the worst that can happen? If it's, obviously if you're putting absolutely everything on the line, that's a slightly different topic potentially, but what is the worst that's going to happen if you try something? And as you say, 21 e-commerce stores, and not everyone, and absolutely the same, amount of things over the years that we've been involved in. And, Could definitely got a few sort of failure hats to that I could pull out the closet sort of thing. So obviously a lot of e-com stores building various teams, working with various teams. How would you say how important culture and a culture first business is?
That's a fantastic question. I think I always say that for me as the MD or the CEO, whatever language you want to use, the founder, the guy that leads the business, the most important thing that I can work on in any business is culture. And I say this to a whole bunch of people. It's funny, I've done talks on culture to prime ministers in the past. Oh, wow. Not our prime minister, but there's definitely been people in the room that have run countries, and I was shocked when they were there. And for me, the thing about culture is there's this really interesting phrase, and I can't remember who said it, but it's a really interesting phrase that says culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think it's totally true. And it's one of the things I've noticed time and time again, that actually it doesn't matter what strategy I create. If the culture in my business is fundamentally flawed, that strategy will never, ever gather any kind of momentum. Do you see what I mean?
100%.
And so I have to work on the culture. I have to work on the values of the people and that work with us, to the point now, whenever we hire people, we have a really interesting graph that we plot people on. It's like a quadrant. So if you think about the vertical axis, and the vertical axis, we measure competence, which is traditionally, how you look at a future hire. What's their competence level? How good are they at their job? How technically, if they're a coder, how good are they at coding? And this is all the information you get from their CV and all that sort of stuff. But we introduced this horizontal axis back in probably 2011, because I was always struggling with the fact that we hired competent people, but the business would still not do what it needed to do. And so we added this horizontal axis. It came after a conversation with a friend of mine in a coffee shop. And on that, I just wrote the word culture. And so we wanted to measure culture. How well connected to the culture that I'm trying to create in the company is this person? And what I found was, if you had someone who was very competent, but they were technically kind of redundant to your culture, so they had high competence but low culture, the top left quadrant, if you like, of our graph, I quickly realized these people were terrorists to your organization. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. This was your quintessential sales rep who was all about the commission and got the sale regardless of the problems it created for the company. And they were like terrorists because they brought in so much revenue, but they were horrible to the organization. And so you as the MD or the boss, you were never sure, should I keep them? Should I fire? And you'd kind of go, do I get rid of them? Do I keep them? Do I get rid of them? And you go between these different things. And so we quickly realized that actually the best people were all the people on the right side of this graph. So people who were strongly aligned to our culture, but their competence wasn't great, always made better hires than people who were competent, but culturally misaligned. But if we could find that person who was high competence and high culture, these were like, we call these superheroes. These are the people that you go out of your way to hire.
I would say if you're listening right now, you should pause and rewind the last 90 seconds, because I think if you listen to this podcast, you're here to scale your business. And the only way to do that is with the right people. And the only way to hire the right people, in my opinion, and I believe in Matt's opinion, is culture first every time. And I think as you're starting out on your e-commerce journey and going from 1 to 5 to 10 to 12, you maybe make a few decisions that are not culture focused or not culture first. So I think that's a great bit of advice there, Matt. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I think it's so helpful, so helpful. Whenever we go into any company, the first thing we ever do, we get them to plot out all their stuff. Where are you? Where are your team right now? It's a really eye-opening kind of experience. And here's the other thing. I don't think you can take someone who is culturally misaligned and align them to your culture. I think it is almost impossible to do that.
It's hard to change certain things that are ingrained, isn't it?
Well, you found it out, right? I mean, you've got as many stories as I have on this kind of thing, hiring people over the years. Geez.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So let's talk website platforms. I know you have your own. So, tell us about that. It's not something I know too much about. Tell us about that. Tell us how it sort of fits into the e-com platform ecosphere.
Ecosphere, I like that. Yeah, I like it. You should trademark that straight away. So we do have a platform because I don't know about you, Richard, when you started your e-commerce, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, you were talking about Excel spreadsheets, right? When we started in e-commerce, there wasn't a Shopify, there wasn't Magento, there wasn't Wix, there wasn't Squarespace, there was WordPress, but they didn't do e-commerce websites. And so if you wanted to do stuff online, you had to either get an agency in to write that code. Whereas what I did was I figured out how to write that code, and I would stay up late at night writing the code. And so over the years, as our business has grown and our online business has grown, that platform has developed. I mean, I don't code anymore. It is way beyond my skill set. There are much more clever people involved in it than I am right now. Yeah. So over the years, that platform has evolved to what I think it should be to run an e-commerce business. And so, and because of that, over the years, people have come to us and said, can we use your platform? And we were like, sure, you can use this platform if it makes sense for your business. And it doesn't make sense for everybody's business, doesn't make sense for everybody. I appreciate that. But there are certain types of businesses that we found it works quite well for. And so, it wasn't a plan. Just like, you found this out with your agency. It's not a plan. It's just enough people ask you for help. Eventually, I'm a bit slow to the market sometimes. I kind of go, well, maybe there's something in this, and that's kind of how it came about.
I think it'll resonate with everybody listening, because that's how most e-commerce stores, in a way, it's like, do you know what? I might actually just buy a few of those things and see if I can sell a couple. If I can sell like 5 a week, that's like 100 quid. And then 5 years later, you're doing like £1 million a month, that need for your own platform. So how would you say, if an e-com store was looking at, Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, et cetera, and then, what's the sort of USP with your platform, would you say?
I think we work really well as a platform if you want to outsource your fulfillment. So because we have a fulfillment service, that's one of the things that we have done over the years, is we've started doing fulfillment for the people. Because that platform integrates really well with that fulfillment service, that's a great thing to do. I think we kind of sit between Shopify and Magento, if I was going to position it. Shopify for me is the Mac Daddy of e-commerce platforms. It's great if you're starting out. It's quick. It's user friendly. I mean, they've cracked it. Do you know what I mean? They've figured it out. But I would often find, even when we had even with our own web development team, whenever we started a new business, we'd always start on Shopify, because it was always quicker, easy, and cheaper to test an idea on Shopify than have the guys develop it out. But I would find that Shopify would have limitations quite quickly for us. And it did not have the bespoke nature that we needed it to have, the customization, the ability to do exactly what I needed it to do. And because certainly on Jersey, for example, which is a beauty website, there was some quite bespoke work that needed to happen around, I've bought these products, but I now need to choose some free samples to go along with that. Yeah. And so it was always the ability to make the website do what I wanted it to do, which was a big draw for me. And then, then I look at Magento, and I have to be honest with you, and I'd be totally straight, cards on the table. I've never used Magento, and I never will. Yeah. And every client that I've ever worked with that has used Magento has got nightmare stories to talk about. And so that's not to say Magento is a bad platform. I know people have used it with great success. Yeah. But I think for me, it's the cost of Magento and all that sort of stuff is just, it's out there for me. So that's kind of where I'd position, what we do.
So if you're listening in and you're sort of in between you're looking at, you may be on Shopify now, you've got things going, you've got to a certain stage, and you may be looking for certain customizations and, and sort of more of a discussion around a bespoke addition to a platform, then it's, then your platform is probably the one to possible discussions there with Matt. So obviously worked on a lot of projects, worked on a lot of your own projects, worked with clients. Obviously you're doing both sides of the fence, if you like. Maybe it'd be good to tell our listeners about a project that you worked on that specifically that got results, for either yourself or for that client, what you did, so whether that's a particular brand you've been working with or one of your own brands, the sort of things that you did that grew that brand? Any specific that can help our listeners? You know, it might spark an idea for them. Think, oh, do you know, I didn't think of that. Or you know, they may be already doing a bit of what you're suggesting, but then like another level up, actually.
So one of the things that one of the game changers that happened at Jersey, I'll tell you about Jersey because it's easier to talk about your own stuff than client. You're never quite sure what you should or shouldn't say. But with Jersey, we moved the business from the island of Jersey to Liverpool, which is where I'm at right now. And we lost, I don't know if you remember, a few years ago, there was a VAT advantage that Jersey companies had for trading. And then that kind of went by the wayside. We moved before that sort of disappeared, but we moved over. And one of the things that I noticed about the company Jersey, because at this point I was getting much more involved, a friend of mine drew for me on a piece of paper. It's amazing how many of these conversations I have where in a coffee shop and a napkin and a pen comes out, and I like diagrams. I'm just that kind of guy. And he drew for me a triangle on a piece of paper, if you can picture this. And in one corner of the triangle, he wrote the word price. On another corner of the triangle, he wrote the word quality. And on the final corner of the triangle, he wrote the word service. Okay. And he said to me, these three things here, you can have a company that's got really phenomenal customer service. You can have a company that sells at a really good price, you know, really great value price or discount pricing. Or you can have a company that sells, you know, really high quality products. Okay. And this is how he defined these sort of three corners. And he said, as a business, you can only choose two. You can't choose three. In other words, you can sell a high quality product at a discounted price, which is where Jersey was. So we had a quality product at a discounted price, but our customer service really, really struggled. We didn't have the investment into customer service. So they were the two that we chose. When we moved from Jersey to the UK, I deliberately transitioned the business from a price quality model into a price service model. So we had, a service quality model. So we had quality product, and we didn't focus so much on low prices. We focused our energy on building a good customer service model. Yeah. The results of that were fascinating. Okay, so we did this in 2011. In 2012, we did this 2010. 2011, my sales dipped, and they've been growing every year since then. So my sales went down. And at the end of that year, I thought, goodness me, I've taken a gamble here, and I don't know if it's actually paid off. Do you know what I mean? Because my sales have dipped. And I thought, I remember wrestling with it. Did we go back to what we were doing? And I thought, no, there's definitely something in this. 2012, we had record sales growth. Okay. So it took a few months for this transition to kick in. But when it kicked in, that had one of the most profound impacts on our business. That wasn't down to tax breaks or VAT advantages or anything like that. It was just down to customers all of a sudden getting a level of service that matched the products that we were selling to them.
So if we went in there a little bit more then, so the guys listening in, they think, do you know what? Yeah, we've been banging out 1,000 orders every hour, whatever, but we know our service needs some love and needs some work. You know, what would be some very specific areas that an e-com store should look at to really up their game when it comes to service and up their, you know, which in turn is going to obviously affect the brand, going to affect the return rate, you know, the average order, the average lifetime value of customers coming back, no doubt. What sort of specifics, hands-on things can an e-com store do to improve customer service?
Yeah, and there's lots, right? So some of the things that we did internally, we invested in technology so that enabled us to make sure that every order we sent out was sent right. There was thousands of pounds worth of savings just by sending the right order out rather than screwing that up, having an annoyed customer resending collections and all that sort of stuff. But if I bring it, so there's a lot of practical things like that, you know, and there's the fundamentals that you've got to get right, like shipping and returns and what makes sense for your industry. And we put the phone number in a big prominent place on the website rather than hiding it in the corner. And we liked it when people called, and we had no time limits. But one of the things that we did do and this for me is the key to customer service and getting it right, was we aligned our culture and our values in our customer service. So we wanted to make sure that customer service was a key part of our culture. What that meant was, if a customer called our office with a problem with their order, then the customer service rep, if I've hired the right rep, okay, they're going to treat that customer in a way which I think is appropriate. And so we wrote this customer service manifesto, and it basically said, you are to treat customers as if, you know, you were that customer. Treat them how you would like to be treated, I think was a phrase that we used. And so there's one story, there's Greg, who used to work for us at this point in time. And Greg was great guy, really compassionate, lovely guy. He picked up the phone, and on the end of that phone was a guy who had called. And it was a Friday morning. And he said, listen, I placed an order yesterday and it's not arrived. The postman has been and gone. I need that order. And so Greg looked up his order, and it's like, he'd chosen the free shipping option, which is 3 to 5 days, right? And so what Greg could have done at that point is he could have said, I'm really sorry. You kind of, you know, it is what it is, deal with it.
Yeah.
But Greg, being the right kind of person, said to the guy, why do you need it so urgently? Tried to understand what the problem was. And he said, it's my wife's birthday tomorrow. And this was going to be her present. Now, Greg is married to a beautiful lady called Martha. And he understood in an instant the problem of not having a birthday present for your wife on the morning of her birthday. He knew why this guy was upset on the other side of the phone. And Greg said to him, he said, listen, ordinarily, he said, this is going to arrive in 3 to 5 days time, but I get why you've got, you know, I'm sorry it didn't arrive. And this guy's, no, I'm really sorry. I should have ordered the next day. I don't know why I didn't, blah, blah, blah. What Greg did without anybody's permission, right? And you can do this if you're a values-led organization. He went to the warehouse himself. He picked and picked and packed that order, but he wrapped it in gift wrap paper so that when the guy got it, he didn't even have to wrap it up. He got a birthday card, got everybody in the warehouse to sign it, including me. Had no idea what I was signing, just happy birthday to somebody I didn't even know or expect, but this was not an irregular occurrence. So I just signed this card. He put in a box of chocolates, sent it out on a next day delivery to arrive by 9 o'clock. Now, you know as well as I do, a Saturday delivery, it's not the cheapest option. And sort of a pre-9 a.m. is definitely not the cheapest option. So his wife, so he gets this present. He literally walks to his wife, gives her this box. Everything's wrapped, chocolates, cards, everything. The wife's, you know, over the moon. I don't know a thing about this until Monday morning when the husband calls me and said, I need to talk to you about Greg. Tells me the story. Do you know what? That guy still buys from Jersey, right? And this was what, 10 years ago when this happened? Still buys from Jersey.
Thinking about the wife getting a card from like 40 random people.
Yeah. We just explained it. He just said, he's like, these guys are amazing. This is what they've done. And that, you know, and it was just,
yeah.
And so it's just things like that.
Yeah.
You cannot find in a marketing book, right? It's not a Facebook ad strategy. It's a humanity strategy. And it's treating people like you would want to be treated. Yeah. And understanding when you do that, the repeat rate goes up. So this was the outcome of changing our business model, was the repeat purchase rate shot through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great story, that, Matt. I think a lot can be learned from that, just going that, you know, a mega extra mile, but making it almost the norm where you can, you know. And
Greg didn't need permission. And do you know what, Richard? I worked it out. I wrote it out on a piece of paper. That cost me 27 quid. And I still remember the number to this day. I don't know why I remember the number. Yeah. But I'm like, by the time that we'd collected the order that was going to arrive a few days later, we'd paid for the extra shipping and the time and all that sort of stuff. The whole thing cost me 27 quid. But I would not have been able to buy the advertising that I got as a result of that 27 quid.
How many people has he told? How many people has his wife told? Just the reviews, just the ripple effect is everlasting, isn't it? Ultimately, always trying to do the right thing by your customer, but that's like going another level, isn't it? Yeah, good for you, Matt. That's great.
Don't get me wrong. If there's Jersey customers listening, going, I've never had that customer service. We are people. We get it wrong sometimes, but it's just that relentless focus on customer service.
Yeah, I think the next time I order from you guys, I'll just put a little note. P.S. Can Greg do my wrapping, please?
Do you know what? I'm not joking when I say this. When Greg would constantly get gifts in the post, genuinely, people would send him gifts because he had treated his customers so nicely. He was sent an 80 quid cashmere jumper from a lady who he just treated nicely. I'm like, and we would obviously give him a lot of grief. Like, does your wife know about this? Does she know what's going on? But he would regularly get gifts in the post from customers. I just couldn't, it was extraordinary, you know?
I think, just going back to that culture piece, obviously Greg likes being where he is, and that you've got somebody like Greg in the business, it just sort of says it all, doesn't it? About the type of company you're running, about the type of people you're employing with that culture first, whereas if you've got somebody in the warehouse like, well, no, we sent that tough sausage or whatever, it's like, well, hang on a minute, that attitude compounded over time, the opposite is a serious problem, isn't it? Whereas you've got somebody like Greg who, is just going over and above, and that makes serious moves in an industry or in a department if somebody is in there sort of leading the way, and that ripple effect within his team, the people that are working with Greg are also, all right, so this is how we do it, but that's, you're hiring those people in the first place, of focusing on that hiring for culture first, brilliant. Yeah, love it. Okay, so let's talk podcasting. So you're like definitely in the top 5 podcasts of e-commerce in the UK. There's 5 others, I think.
Yeah. I'll take 5th. I'm happy with 5th. Yeah. That's fine.
Oh, I'm 4th. Yay! We were just saying, we've got a very similar sort of podcast count at the moment, haven't we?
Yeah. We have
sort of very similar footprint, I think.
It's quite fascinating, isn't it?
Yes. It's obviously quite new to both of us, isn't it? That sort of year or so.
Yeah.
For you, but yeah. So obviously a lot of guests on the podcast over the years, and a lot of advice been shared and given and whatnot. Is there sort of any sort of standout guests that have shared one or two bits of advice that really stand out? And that's quite a tricky question, because I know there'll be dozens and dozens and dozens of them. But any specific things that stand out from guests?
There are, and I could pick each guest and talk. I can still remember the majority of guests and the things which they talk about. And I have to be honest with you, I don't know if you're like me, Richard, I take copious amounts of notes. And so I have pages and pages of notes whenever I have a guest. And we take those concepts and those ideas, and I sit down with the team after recording the podcast and go, what can we learn from this, guys? Right? What can we put into place? What can we do? And I noticed your recent guest have you had Lauren on recently, Lauren Schwartz? Yeah, she was lovely, talking about ad copy and just getting, to pick her brains. Remarkable guest, remarkable lady. And we've had all kinds of people like that. I think some of the things that have stood out, we had one guest on, I think it was last season. I'm trying to remember when it was now. Yeah, we had one guest on last season. We were talking about email marketing. And one of the things that she said, which actually it was what, when you have the penny drop yourself, and I've been in the game a long time. She was like, the whole purpose of email marketing is to sell the click, not the product. And I thought this was really, really interesting. And her whole theory based around this idea of email reputation. So if you were sent an email and you opened it and you clicked through to a website, you had a massively strong email reputation where that email service provider is concerned. So if I send it to a Google account, they're monitoring how many emails they're getting from me, how many people are opening them, and then how many people are clicking through to the website. And so she talked a lot about email reputation, but she was like, sell the click. And if you can do that, if you can sell the click. And so we took this principle, this idea, and started to integrate it a little bit with our email marketing. So we would start to do things like pixelated images in our emails, which just said secret offer only available to VIP customers, and it would have a question mark over it, click here to find out more. Well, when we started experimenting with this idea of selling the click, the open rates and click-through rates of our emails changed, actually.
Yeah.
And I thought, goodness me, just that one simple thing, sell the click.
Sell the click rather than the end result. It's the next step. So in email, it's a bit like subject line first bit of the paragraph first, no next.
Exactly. And you,
rather than trying to write, the main thing is to make sure we've got a good offer. You know, normally people will just drop a couple of products in and discount them, job done. Well, ultimately, there's quite a bit to it.
There is.
Yeah.
There is. So sell the click. Think about what's going to get somebody to click through to your website. What's going to get them to sort of press that button.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just checking now. That was our episode 52. Why everything you know about email marketing could be wrong.
Yeah.
And I thought that was with Gabby, actually. She's lovely, Gabby, Canadian lady. Have you had her on your show?
Oh, no.
You should get her on because she's just fantastic. Yeah, I really like Gabby.
We'll link the episode up. And so you guys listening, you'll be able to link, click the link and have a listen to that one. Okay, Matt. So obviously dozens and dozens and dozens of episodes on your show. Obviously dozens of literally e-commerce stores that you've ran and worked with, obviously lots of different companies. What's one or two things that you would say you see coming up as the sort of future piece for e-com? What are the couple of things this next year or two that these guys need to have their eye on? You know, the things that, you know, maybe are going to come and they're going to miss it or miss that early adopter stance on.
I think one of the things that I think there's been a move towards over lockdown is there has been an awareness, more so than ever, certainly in the UK, of Amazon and Amazon's business practices. So I think companies are looking for I think customers are looking for a reason not to buy from Amazon. And actually, if you can create that compelling reason, you can do really well by drawing people away. I'm not saying ignore Amazon at all. I'm not. I think the things which draw people in to your website now are things like authenticity, transparency, figuring out who you are as a person, having that sense of brand identity, knowing when to stand for something, having a voice, just doing something not different for different sake, but just standing out from the crowd. And I think if you can do that, if you can literally put your heart and soul into the business, as well as just, the hope that this is going to somehow make you wealthy and rich, there is always a place for you, I think, in e-commerce. And I think as the world gets bigger and as information becomes more and more, what people are genuinely looking for is human connection. We've learned this through COVID, right? And it might sound a bit airy-fairy. It's like, it's not a formula, but it's fundamental humanity. We crave connection with like-minded people. And this again comes down to, this is my company culture. This is what we stand for. Who are you going to attract? I'm going to attract people that have similar values to me. So the customers don't ever think about buying from Amazon because their value is not what Amazon offer. Does that make sense? And so their loyalty is really quite strong. And so for me, it's wearing your heart and soul on your sleeve for your business. It's being out there, it's doing the live streams, it's doing the videos, it's doing the podcasts, it's doing whatever you need to do to connect with people, and then making sure you stay connected with them. Because for me, the secret to e-commerce is not in the first sale, it's in the 5th, the 6th, the 7th sale to that customer. And so growing that repeat business shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be your main thought, your main portion of marketing budget. We had this debate with Chloe. She did the e-commerce summit a few weeks ago, which was phenomenal, and she did a great job. Do you know Chloe?
Yes.
She's lovely, Chloe. And we did this whole thing on, is it about customer acquisition or is it about customer retention? Obviously, it's about both. And how do you split your marketing budget between retention and how do you split your money between acquisition? And for me, because so many of our customers are retention, I just literally look at the percentage breakdown. If 60% of our business comes from customer retention, that's where 60% of my marketing budget needs to go. And it's just a simple thing in my head. So I don't know if that's helpful, if that answers your questions, but I would be looking at those two things. I'd be looking at retention and I'd be looking at that just that brand voice,
Getting that brand
identity.
message across, that personality, the brand. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think that's a brilliant end to a very, very informative 45 minutes or so. Now, I always like to end on a book recommendation. Matt, do you have a book that you would recommend to our listeners?
So many of them, and I just love learning and reading. What I might recommend actually is not so much a book, but the latest app that I've downloaded, which is one of these book cheat things.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I came across this after a review on, I was watching something on YouTube, and it's called Short Form. Okay. And it's a new, I'd never heard of it before. And it's a bit like, there's an app out there at the moment, I can't remember the name of it, it'll come back to me, where you can sort of in 5 minutes digest the key points of a book.
Blinkist is one.
Blinkist, that's it, yeah. And so I tried that for a little while, and it was great just to get the summary, and I kind of read it, and I thought, do I want to take that therefore and read this book? Whereas what Short Form does is it kind of gives you that overview, but then it goes into a little bit more detail. It just gives you a bit more kind of stuff to get around.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it's brilliant. And so I've just been reading a book by Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep, because I'm fascinated, as bizarre as it sounds, I'm fascinated by sleep at the moment, what it is, why we do it, what does it mean, and so on and so forth. I spend a third of my life doing it. I figure I should know at least a little something about it. So I've been reading books about sleep, which has been fantastic. So I would recommend that app, Short Form.
Brilliant.
Try that out.
Yeah, no, I will be downloading in about 3 minutes time, I think. So for the guys that want to find out more about you, Matt, and connect with you, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, it'd be great. Simply head over to mattedmundson.com and you'll find all the social media links there, and all the ways to get in touch with me. But yeah, mattedmundson.com. Be great to meet you.
Lovely. Well, thanks for being on the show, Matt. I look forward to speaking to you again.